Yeah, so Martin, welcome back to episode 6 of our podcast. Thanks again for taking the time and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here.
When we left off last time, we talked about your business and basically that your business got victim of a huge betrayal and that it went bankrupt. And last thing you told me is you left the attorney's office, which has had negotiated with the banks and your creditors, and he said, "Okay, you are good to go, all sorted." And you left relieved, but I think also you were at a point where you had to restart again.
Correct, yes.
How did this story go on?
The day I walked out of those offices and walked up the street was surreal. I think, even thinking back on it now, I actually didn't realize the magnitude of what had happened, and to be honest, I didn't even think it was true. How could this be? How could this have worked out? But it did. So yes, I left very relieved, and I no longer had the wolves at the door, which was my major concern, was how was I going to pay these creditors back? How was I going to pay the bank back? I mean, how was this going to play out? How was this going to work? So I left relieved that that was no longer a concern. So I turned my focus now onto okay, but what now?
Yeah, because of course you didn't have your business anymore, no income anymore, but you had a family and a son,
Yes.
and you had to put bread on the table.
Yes. So, you start thinking, well, should I go out and look for another job maybe? But, that would just take me back to where I was in any case, which is where I didn't want to be, and that was behind the counter, helping people with camera equipment and with photographic advice. And I didn't want to necessarily be there in that retail environment again, because that would have been a quick option, was just to phone around and find if there's any of our competitor companies who would want to, offer you a job. So, and I didn't want to do that. So I took a little bit of time out just to think about it carefully, and had a discussion with my wife, who at that point was just so relieved that I was relieved, that she sort of left it up to me to decide. And that was, and that I didn't realize at that point too, that the decision that I took, certainly the one decision that I took, would have a lifelong impact on me and what I offer, what I do as a living.
What did you do next? So what was your first new job?
You're going to laugh at this, Ralph. My first new job was to go back to commercial photography. But I didn't have a studio, of course. I'd lost that a long time back. Although I had good equipment, I didn't have the right equipment. So I couldn't go into mainstream commercial photography. So I decided my very first thing would be to go back into wedding photography. Now, I'd done wedding photography prior to when I opened my first studio, and it was quite a lucrative form of business. It's not the greatest type of photography, of course. It's and I'd done many weddings, and now I was doing even more weddings, or wanted to do even more weddings. But I was so grateful that it could be a quick turnover to a solution to be able to, pay the mortgage at the end of the month and put food on the table, etc. So surprisingly, I managed to get back into that quite quickly. And I did it. And then I took the decision that I was going to teach. I had already had a taste of teaching photography at the university, which I've spoken about. I had a feel that could actually work for me. And I thought I'd go back. I'd go back to the university and say, okay, guys, we did a whole lot of classes, seemed to have gone quite well. Should we just get going again? And I did that, and I was very surprised at the answer. The answer was no. We're not interested. Thank you very much, Martin, but it was really good while it lasted. But And the statement they gave me, and this is what I think is so important, um, if I took it to heart, it would have sown doubt in my mind. And their statement was, I think, Martin, we have saturated the market. Now, just
Oh.
think about that for a moment. Okay, yes, it was days before the internet was even something to consider. There was days when you wanted to advertise, you put an advert in the newspaper because that's how you would reach a local community, because an international community was just not even an option. So it was those days. But the statement was, market is saturated. So you basically taught everyone you can in this city. So no, we're not interested. So I left there that day licking my wounds a little bit, thinking, that's crazy. It cannot be. How could we have saturated an entire city's market with 8 photography classes or whatever it was?
Mm.
So I took a decision that day. I'll do it myself. I will do it all on my own. I will go and find myself a place where I can teach from, even if I have to rent a small property, rent a room or whatever it is. And I would start to advertise myself, even if it means putting adverts in the newspaper or whatever it took. And I took that decision that I enjoyed it. I felt that I was good enough at it because I had no complaints during my 8 classes or 9 classes, whatever it was I taught. And those people I had taught were still friends of mine. So I felt, okay, I can actually do this, and I will do it on my own. And that was the 2 things I did. So the wedding photography turned up quite quickly. It didn't take long just to put out some feelers with people I'd done weddings with before to say, listen, I'm back in the market. I'm shooting weddings again. If you've got any friends that you can refer to me. And they did. And that also proved to me, and I think this is important, is that word of mouth is so important in a business. If you're doing things right, and you give people a great experience, either in the case of photographing their weddings for their loved ones or themselves, or teaching them that they remember the experience, then that's your best ally. So I contacted those I had taught already, told them I was now teaching on my own. I didn't tell them where I was teaching because I didn't have a place. And I let the wedding people know I was back in business, and it didn't take long. And it started to pick up.
Mm.
I did something, I counted the other day, I don't know, 130, 150 weddings over a period of time. I mean, Ralph,
Wow.
if the pastor or the minister doesn't turn up to marry them, Martin can. Martin knows all the words. I know exactly what to do. I could become a wedding counselor overnight. There was no problem with that. So got straight back into that. And my wife helped me to assist on some of the weddings just to give me a hand. And the big thing was I was behind the camera, not behind the counter. The very thing I had asked for years ago had come around in a very strange way.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, you could have built a business making commercial weddings like Las Vegas or so, but of course this wasn't available at that time.
Yeah, I agree. But it still comes back to the thing that even at that point, I had no idea where this was all going.
Mm.
No idea. And, the commercial business started to grow from there as we progressed. And the teaching became the big surprise factor. The big surprise factor for me.
Yeah. When you mention the value of word of mouth and the quality to deliver, that's something that you still pursue. You always are striving for a high quality standard, and that set your standard in these early days, I guess.
Yes, because it was beneficial to how you did business. So I realized at a very early point in my career that is important. I mean, I know that even our relationship where we're working together on the Art Photography Academy, which we've been building together, I think it sometimes frustrates you that I can be so slow at producing a module or a
Okay.
course because but I'm almost sure it could be like, but Martin, you don't have to go to that depth, or you don't have to. But I know it's about an experience. So, and I want to deliver as best as possible.
Mhm. Okay, now you were touching the teaching again, and how did this continue? How did this turn out?
Well, if we go back to what I said before, is when I was involved in the type of business I was involved in, I couldn't actually speak to my business partner. And I couldn't tell him I was frustrated being behind the counter. And I couldn't tell him I wanted to get back into photography because he had no motivation to listen to that.
Mm.
His motivation was, let's just keep sprinting because we're doing well.
Did he want to continue the business and get you back?
It was a difficult situation. Like, his wife had bought a property which we were renting for our wholesale business.
Mhm.
So it was a standalone house on a main street, and we were using that for our big business. And
Mhm.
that's where my office was, and that's where his office was, and then we had our retail shops and our labs spread around town. So I walked in there now after all had happened, and of course, after we cried on each other's shoulder with joy that this episode had turned out the way it has. We sat down, and he said to me, "Marty, where do we go to from here? Are you walking? Are you leaving? Are you on your way?" And I said to him, "I don't really know, because I don't really know where I'm going, but I want to get back into teaching, and I want to start teaching photography just to get going." And he said, "Well, where are you going to teach?" And I said, "I have no idea, but I'm going to find a place. And hopefully it's comfortable enough for people to come, and hopefully I get people."
Mhm.
And he looked at the house and he said, but why don't you use this? He said, "My wife owns it, and there's no income coming in at the moment in any case. So, and I'll ask her to rent it out to you for a while and see, what you can do." So I
Mhm.
said, "Oh, that's fine. I'll go and get the price and see what it's going to cost. I don't think I can pay for a while until I get students." And then he did an amazing thing. Uh, he said to me, "Well, do you need my help?" And it was a big question. I didn't realize that it was a big question. I don't even think it was a loaded question. I think he was just bored now because he had nothing to do and he didn't know where to go. And I said, "Well, how can you help?" So he said, "Well, I'll just talk to her about giving you the place at no rent for a while to get started. And perhaps I can help you to get students." And I said, "Well, how?" And he was involved in Rotary, which is quite a big organization worldwide. He was very high up in Rotary, and he was very big in business. If you remember, he came from the 3M background, so he knew a lot of people. So he said, "No, I'll just talk to people. I'm sure they'd want to come and learn a bit." I didn't realize where it was going to go. And suddenly there were inquiries that he had put out. We put an ad in the newspaper, not even knowing that we would fill the seats. And within weeks, he came and he said, "Well, how many people can we squeeze into the room?" Ralph, we could squeeze 8. 8 full people could squeeze into the room that we could use to teach. No
Mhm.
more than 8. That was it.
Mhm.
And he said, "Good, well, we've got a course going, so let's get going." And we did. And that was the start. And he also came to me and said, "Well, do you want me to do some of the talking?" So I said, "Yes, do the introduction for me. That'll be nice, seeing it's your friends."
Mhm.
And he said, "Well, do you want me to do like an entertainment piece? Like I love the history of photography. So do you want me to do something to entertain them?"
Mhm.
I said, "I would love that because I'm so nervous. So well, why not?" And he said he would do that. And then he said, "Where's the notes? What notes are we giving them?" I said, "I've got a few pieces of paper with some notes." "No," he said, "that's not good enough. We need to do the notes." He was very good at English as well. So
Mhm.
so he went and redrafted my notes, got everything done, helped me to just clean it up and make it look professional. And there we were, ready to teach our first class of 8 friends, or he.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually felt that was probably more pressure than teaching down at the university.
Just wanted to say, if it's people that he knows and he brought in and he put his credibility in, then it's up to you to deliver now. How did you feel?
It was like, come and do this course, make sure you pay because the poor guy needs money, and make sure you're nice to him. So it was sort of like that.
Okay.
Ralph, that evening again, the place that we rented didn't have, the place that we were doing our business at didn't have much parking. It never needed parking place.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, the first big problem, where do people park? And I remember them, finding parking down the street and up the road and complaining like anything about, we must do something about the parking. But in they came with their cameras and their tripods, and that room was, grassroots levels were such good memories. I mean, we couldn't afford chairs, Ralph. We couldn't afford, and I couldn't afford to rent chairs. So we bought plastic garden chairs.
Okay.
You know the ones I'm talking about, plastic garden chairs. And then we sat on it and said, oh, this doesn't feel very comfortable. So we ran back and bought some cushions. But the only cushions they had were these flowery designs that you get for the outside pool area. And we put those little cushions on, and it looked hideous. It honestly looked hideous. To us, it looked great, but it was hideous. And we had these two old fans that were turning on the ceiling, making a noise. We had to spray some Q20 oil on them to get them to quieten down. And that was our lecture room, with an old slide projector in the back that would show the slides that you are teaching. What a start. What a start.
But it was a start.
It was a start. And I was surprised because at the end there was many questions, and there was lots of laughter and lots of joy and lots of excitement. And the next day we got some calls back from some of his friends saying how they enjoyed it and how they loved it, and they're so happy that they signed up. And they would refer people again. People buy from people, and if people have a good experience, they talk about it. If people have a bad experience, they talk about it 10 times more. But if they have a good experience, they talk about it. And he kept coming back to me saying, well done, we're doing good, look at this. And for us, it was a hobby. This was like a little part-time thing with a little bit of cash that came into, but it was a night school. Let's be clear on this, because these people were professional people and they couldn't afford to come in the day. So this started off as a night school. And it just basic photography classes, photo school, I think we called it, just the photo school. We had no other name for it, and it was grassroots levels at its best. But it continued, and before we knew it, the 6 weeks for the course was up, and it flew by. It was one night a week for 6 weeks, similar to I suppose the concepts that we're even using today at the Art Photography Academy when it comes to the time frames of the classes, especially for amateur photography and what have you. But I did enjoy it, I must say. The adrenaline high when you leave after an evening of teaching was great. I remember getting home and not being able to sleep. It was just sitting up until hours afterwards, just contemplating, but knowing that I wouldn't be able to sleep because, the energy level was great.
Yeah. Adrenaline, energy, all high. Yeah.
All high. Yeah. But at that stage, not financially viable to that point, because I felt obligated to him as well. And I said to him, well, then any income that comes in, we'll split it 50-50. If you're putting in your effort, I'll put in mine. And I didn't realize that I'd gone from a 20% shareholder in the previous business we lost, now to a 50% shareholder, informally, into a business we didn't even knew what the potential was like. Only found that out later.
Okay, so your first course was done. You're still in wedding so during the daytime, wedding photography or commercial photography, nighttime, your first course. But it was just one course, so not a problem at that time. And how did this continue then?
Ralph, the speed at which it grew was phenomenal.
Mhm.
I felt that it was almost abnormally phenomenal at that
Mhm.
sense, because before I know it, we were teaching 4 nights a week.
Oh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because you must remember that these are night schools, so you get extra people, and they say, "But I really want to do it now. I'm not going to wait for 8 weeks." But okay, but the next course is actually booked full. Okay, but I'm not going to wait for 16 weeks. So what are we going to do? Well, that's fine. We'll just open a Wednesday class. We'll open a Tuesday class. We'll open a Thursday class. I dug my heels in when it was Friday. You must remember my business partner was a real go-getter. So when he started to see, oh, but hang on, wait a minute, there is a tap here that's turned on. I want to make sure that it's turned on fully. You would say, well, Mari, what about teaching a Friday evening class or a Saturday evening class? And I said, no, no, no. It's for 4 nights a week is already doing it for me. He twisted my arm for a Saturday morning class at one stage, but with all of this, even though the energy levels were high, the enjoyment was high, the excitement of a new business. I mean, we're talking about the growth in the first year. Um, Teaching does take it out of you. It takes it out of you. To give and to give and to give is great. But you also need to take time out to relieve from that, so that you can build energy for that again. So, luckily, I was still young, so we could actually do that, and yeah, it got really busy. So the day, commercial photography, there was no editing in those days. So if you're shooting weddings, it meant taking your films off to the lab, getting them processed, indexing your slides, then get all your negatives, and then having them printed, put the albums together, and get the weddings out. And with that came other small commissions and jobs. So daytime was preparing for classes, preparing for that, and then yeah, doing all the cleanup work for photography. And then Saturdays was wedding day. Saturday
Mm.
afternoons was wedding day, sometimes even a Sunday. So before I knew it, I was on the hamster wheel again, and I was now sprinting, but not making anywhere near the income we used to. But there was a difference. I was really enjoying what I was doing. I was
Mm.
really enjoying what I was doing. It was not a problem to be able to put that much time in. It was just um, an energy thing. That's all. It was just, sure, I feel like I need a break now, but let's keep going.
Yeah, 100%. It was tied to your time and energy. So
Mm,
that was the limit,
mm.
how far it could grow, because it was, you can't work 8 days a week, of course.
No, well, yes, no, you can't. And we were, the schools, to be honest, at that stage, neither, and let me mention his name rather, because I think by saying business partner all the time, I'm being a little bit, what could you say, disrespectful.
Mhm.
So, um, so Bob himself and myself did not realize at that point the potential of what we were sitting on. We knew that we could only teach evening classes because that was the type of clients we were getting, was people from professional business in most cases.
Mhm.
Sure, one or two could come to day classes if they wanted to, because they had the lifestyle to do that. But for most people, it was an after-hours hobby thing.
Mhm.
That was what it was.
Yeah.
And it was their enjoyment and their time after hours as a hobby. And like you say, there wasn't 8 days in a week. And I wasn't prepared to teach for all of the 7. So
Mm.
it was a problem. It was a problem. And I must also say at this point, we didn't realize the potential of what we were sitting on. Again, remember, no internet, no Zoom, no the stuff we have today, not online classes, nothing like that. We've sort of felt that we could hit our level, or our ceiling very quickly, but we didn't realize where it would go to. But
Mhm.
we didn't know how to scale it. We didn't know. Or
Having
we
this constraint in your head that it's limited by your time,
Yes,
you don't even think about how could it work differently. But
yes.
I guess you found a way.
It was paying the bills for sure. It was helping
Yeah.
us tremendously for that.
Mhm.
But I could also see that it was something I loved doing, but it was not an option for the rest of my life
Mm.
because we had to move on a little bit, but we didn't know how to do it. What I also didn't realize is how much the public in general love photography. I never realized that. You must remember, I was in commercial photography as a professional photographer from day one. My whole life behind photography was using the lens to make money. So for me, as much as I enjoyed photography, there was always a commercial tag to it. And even though I was selling and helping to sell cameras to the public, I still never saw the other side. What happens when that person leaves the shop with the camera in a box and a packet in their hands, and they go home and they unpack it? And like I've always said, that wonderful smell with a new camera when you unpack the camera and what now? I never knew the what now. What happens next? And I never knew the love that people have for photography. And suddenly it was starting to happen in front of my eyes. Teach them how to use the camera, help them with their composition a bit, and then start to show them what they can do with it. And it was just a passion for them. People used to come to me after the 6 weeks and say, "What now? I've done the 6 weeks, I've done the class, loved that. What am I going to be doing on a Monday evening or Tuesday evening or a Thursday evening from now on? What's next? Where are we going?"
Mm.
And we started thinking about, okay, an advanced class then. But where do you put the advanced class in? You're already full for the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So how do you do that? And then they started saying, well, can we not go out on excursions? Can't we go out together as groups and go and photograph? We are excited. We are ready to go. Show us.
Still have some spare time on Sunday morning, so
We never realized that. And
yeah.
we never saw an option that this could be a scalable business. Both of us, we never saw it. We were just so grateful that we were getting these inquiries coming in so regularly, and the excitement of the evening when people were leaving. That's what we were excited about. I mean, Ralph, just to give you an idea, even my mother, my own mom, would come along in the evenings to help us just to do the tea and the coffee and the welcome and the goodbye, because she could see that her son here was okay at teaching, but he wasn't so good at the rest of the stuff. Is the milk warm? Is there something to eat? Is there? And so she would come in on those evenings and make sure everybody was looked after, and she was so loved for that as well. But how do you grow this? How do you take this further if you don't have the tools or the vision on how to do this? And that's really where we were at that point. And we're talking here just over a year of this sort of well, I don't even want to call it a business, because at that stage we didn't see it as a business. But Bob decided out of his own, I don't know, for himself, in order to make extra income. He didn't have wedding photography to help him. He said he's opening up a retail shop again. Or he's going back into retail, sorry, that's what he said. So he said, "You coming with me?" And I said, "Not a chance." And now at least I had the opportunity to say no. So I said, "No, not a chance. It's not my claim to fame." He said, "You're very good at it." I said, "I don't like it. It's not my love. But if you want to do it, it's yours." So he said, "Well, there's an opportunity here, because a lot of his friends are coming to him saying, where do they buy a lens? Where do they buy another camera? How do they get film? Where can they?"
Was
Yeah. So he took another room in the house and he said, "This is my shop." And he went and he got some stock in from some of the wholesalers who still respected him on a cash basis. And I'll give him credit, he grew that little shop into a business for himself. But he was not going back into large-scale business again. He too had burnt his fingers really hard, and he just And he was enjoying it. He was enjoying his little shop and enjoying his customers, who were now a captive audience because they were part of our photography teaching base. And
Mm.
but still, how do you scale this? He had an opportunity to maybe go further, but I didn't. I couldn't see how we could take this further.
Yeah. Hiring salespeople is easy, especially as you have done it before, so you could get back to these guys or hire new ones. But teaching someone to teach photography
Mm.
is more difficult, or seems more difficult
Mm.
at that point, at least. So,
Yes.
did you find a way?
I didn't find a way,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a way. I've said this all along, that I feel sometimes one's steps are ordered very gently and steered in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't find it, but it fell into my lap. And I didn't even realize it at the time. And it came through the strangest way. I had a student turn up on the night school, somebody who Bob didn't know, who had found out we teaching through word of mouth, a young German gentleman by the name of Herbert. And he'll know that I'm talking about him because he still follows me today. And he came into the class and he came to learn photography. And after the 6 weeks, he didn't just say, "What now?" You know, he said, "I can't stop here. This is not what I want. I want more." You know, and he pointed me in the right direction. But he didn't do it on purpose. He did it by accident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just
And what
complete.
did he say?
He said, "I'm not allowing you to say no, but I have to go further now." He said, "I
Okay.
love this. I love the class, but it's not the level I want to be at. I want to be at a much higher level."
Mm-hmm.
I said to him, "I don't have a higher level for you because I don't have extra nights available for you."
Mm-hmm.
He said to me, "Well, will you mentor me? So can we do a mentor agreement?
Mm-hmm.
You just, yeah, I'll just turn up here in the day and do whatever you want, and you just mentor me." Oh, and I said to him, "Sure, if it's going to keep you quiet, well, I don't know what you can do for me because in the daytime I'm busy with all kinds of other things." And Bob overheard this. And he overheard the conversation that we were having, and he came with a solution. And a solution I had never thought of, and I was almost scared of.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it was a solution indeed. Do you want me to tell you?
Yes, please. I'm waiting.
I don't know how much time we have, so I'm sitting here thinking,
No
"Oh,
time.
goodness, okay, just know we run out of time here," and then you stop me in mid-sentence.
Yeah, that might happen always, but
Yeah.
please continue. Yes.
He sat down with me the next morning with this exact problem, sitting with me saying, "Marty, where are we going with this?" He said, "I sit back here as a businessman, and I see opportunity, and I don't know where to take it. But when Herbert was here yesterday and he was so determined to continue, it means that we're doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many more Herberts around town, many, many more. I can promise you that it's not just him." And I said, just based on my own friends, they would value this opportunity. So he said, "Why don't we look at opening up a fully fledged college to teach photography? Why don't we take it to another level altogether? Why don't we now offer a full-time program? So where the students can come in on a daily basis in the day and not at night. So they have to commit to daytime school, and we can teach them in a day environment where it doesn't impact on our night school. And then continue with the night school because, what the heck, you're young, you can just do it. And I just loved the idea you know, of doing that. And then he said, "Just think about it, Martin. Just close your eyes and imagine." I mean, he really had a vision. Honestly, he was, yeah. And he said, "Can you imagine studios where we photograph, where you teach them how to use the studio lighting, and you teach them how to light portraits and how to light, all the stuff imagine that, and imagine darkrooms. Can you imagine? We have our own black and white darkroom and our own color darkroom, and we teach them how to print. And can you imagine, Martin? Yeah, and I could imagine. Oh my goodness, this was like talking my language. It was like dangling big carrots in front of me. So I said to him, all right, but I don't know where we're gonna go with this. And he said, well, let's just start. So let's at least put in a darkroom. The very next day, we bought darkroom equipment, and we turned one of the rooms, the old kitchen, we turned into a darkroom. Oh, I loved it. Oh, I was back in my absolute space. The creativity, the smell of the chemicals, and we started developing, and we stared getting ready, and
Did you buy some more garden chairs, plastic garden chairs?
No, we only had what we could afford. At that stage, of course, we had upgraded the chairs. They looked a little bit better, but there was only so much we could do at the property we had.
Of
It
course.
didn't have parking or sufficient parking, and it didn't have enough space, but it had space for a darkroom. So we put in a darkroom because we just wanted to. And
You could increase the quality of the teaching or the intensity of the teaching, and also teaching during daytime.
No, at that stage, we weren't teaching any of that. We were just, he had said, let's build something with the idea of going into a 6-month program. It's going to take us a while to sign up enough students. I think he did the numbers, and he said, we need 12. We just need 12 students. If we can get 12 students who sign up for a 6-month program, and they come in from Monday to Friday, we will be fine. But we actually didn't have the space to teach them. So, we would have had to go and look for a studio to go and rent so that I could teach from there. Big enough to be able to teach from. That was a problem for tomorrow. We'd have to find that solution, yeah. Our little darkroom could only house like 2 people at a time, so that would have to be, sort of utilized all the time in the week to teach them how to develop and print. And at least we were now looking at how we could fill Monday to Friday in the day, how we could actually, how we could utilize that time to grow what was already becoming such an exciting thing, and that people wanted more, that we could actually offer more. And, but yeah, this wasn't the sit down and plan meeting around the boardroom, Ralph. No, I'm not talking. I'm talking about the cup of coffee at the coffee shop planning. This was like writing down on the back of a piece of paper and saying, well, what if? Well, can you imagine if? This is what that was all about. Neither him nor I actually knew where this would ever go. But we knew we enjoyed it, both of us. We enjoyed it. He enjoyed the fact that he could sell cameras to people who were coming in as a captive audience, and he could actually keep them, busy with that. And that he had people leaving with a smile on their face. And at that stage, we were paying rent too, as well. So his wife was very happy that she had a tenant again. And of course, we were very happy that we had some bread on the table, and that we had this exciting hobby that was busy growing.
So together with Bob, you were back in business, but still at the stage where you had an idea and you could not know if it would turn out successfully or maybe fail, because that's a huge difference giving night classes to people who bring other people in by word of mouth, compared to building a college or an academy basically for photography and art photography.
So he was talking about scaling the business to take care of that market. Of course, Herbert was hanging around because he just loved the environment. So whenever you hear banging and clinging, and Herbert was in the darkroom busy printing and developing, and I couldn't really mentor him at that stage because there was nothing to mentor him with. He just loved the environment. So he kept putting the pressure. When do we start? When do we start? When can we go? I need to learn more. Come on. And sometimes you need that person too. And he was indeed there. And, and then I'd laugh at him and say, would you be the first to sign up? And he'd say, bring the papers. Let me sign up right now. And then Bob was there saying, take his money. Come on, he's ready to go. I said, what money? We don't even have a price yet. We don't even have a program yet. That was what it was like. It was that, yeah. And many probably watching or listening to this podcast can relate to that in their early days of business. I'm sure you can relate to that too. It's you never know what tomorrow is going to bring, and I think the big lesson is that if you do what you love doing, or even better, if you can find out what you were born to do, then you will find that the business tends to follow you regardless.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that for me is sort of the lesson that I learned out of this whole experience.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect ending. That is usually my last question. What did you learn out of it? And we will continue this story and how it turns out and how it continues in the next episode. So Martin, thank you very much for this episode, for the time, for sharing your insights, and looking forward to see how the story continues in our next episode, number 7.
Can you believe it? 7 episodes and we haven't really started yet. Isn't that exciting? Thank you, Ralph. I thank you for your time too, and I look forward to chatting to you again soon. Cheers, everybody.
Yeah, cheers, everybody. Bye.